Hello, and welcome to the 15-minute LinkedIn makeover presented by FlexJobs. Today, we are going to give you a few actionable steps that you can take to update your LinkedIn profile in 15 minutes or less. Whether you are brand new to LinkedIn or you're an active user who's already familiar with LinkedIn, I'm sure that you will learn at least one new tip or trick that you can utilize to update and optimize your LinkedIn profile. For today's example, we are going to use career coach Tracy Capizzoli. She allowed us kindly to look at something she had on her profile before, and then we made a few changes, and then we will show you what we did after. All right, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is the headline. You can see before that Tracy's headline was career coach and remote work advocate. Now, this isn't a bad headline. You have a great idea of what Tracy does. You know what career field she's in, but there's a little bit more that could be added here. So you see on the right, we kept career coach and remote work advocate, but we also added something unique about Tracy. What is her kind of unique value proposition statement? And we added helping clients create a flexible work-life balance. So not only is she a career coach and a remote work advocate, but here's what she wants to help clients do. Here's what she strives to do and what's unique about her as opposed to another type of career coach. We also added job search strategist. When you think of your headline, you want to move beyond just your job title. You want to think about any key terms, words, or phrases that potential clients, hiring managers, or recruiters might be using when they're searching for people. So, as you begin to think about not just your job title in your industry, but what's unique about you, what skills or abilities or specific tools and resources do you tend to focus on in the work that you do? Think about those things and add that to your headline so it's not just your job title. All right, next is the featured work section. This section is often underutilized and overlooked by most people on LinkedIn as a job seeker, but it's something that recruiters and hiring managers definitely love to look for and love to see. You can see before, Tracy didn't have this section. This was not something that she was utilizing. So our quick tip here was to go ahead and add this section. If you don't already have something pinned in your featured work section, it won't show up on your profile. As soon as you pin something there, it will then show up, and it is right underneath your summary section and before your professional experience section. The featured work area is a great way to highlight what work you've already done, what you've accomplished, what are other people saying about you. This could be press or media, could be articles or posts that you've written or been featured in, could be a YouTube video or a podcast or a presentation that you worked on. Anything that you can add here that will show employers and hiring managers what your skills, abilities, and accomplishments are that are living proof, right? It's not just a bullet that you're adding, but it's something real and tangible that they can look at and see to get a better sense of who you are and what your work has been in the past, so they have an idea of what you'll do for them in the future. So if you are not already utilizing the featured work section, I really encourage you to think about what kinds of things you might be able to pin and highlight here. Next is professional experience. You can see on the left, Tracy has a ton of professional experience. It took 3 screenshots to be able to capture it all. And on the right, you can see that we really pared it down a little bit. Your LinkedIn profile doesn't need to be your entire work history. You really want to focus on what is the most recent thing that you've done and what's going to be the most relevant experiences that you want to highlight that are related to the jobs you're applying for. Something 20 years ago may or may not be relevant to the jobs you're looking to do now. An employer and hiring manager doesn't necessarily need to see everything that you've done. They just need to see enough to know that you're qualified or have enough experience to do the job that they are hiring for. So take a look at your professional experience section and see what you might be able to eliminate or pare down. Typically, you want to try to stay within about the last 10 to 15 years of experience. But if you do have something older than that that is going to be relevant, go ahead and keep it. That's totally fine. You just want to be intentional with what jobs and experiences you are highlighting in this section and what can possibly be combined. Tracy has a period of time where she was doing multiple different consulting projects. Instead of keeping those in three separate positions or areas, she combined those into one. So maybe you've done freelance work or independent contractor work or whatever it might be. That could also be one section that you incorporate multiple projects into. So the kind of recap of this area in this section is to really trim it down and make sure that you're only featuring what's most recent, what's most important, and what's most relevant. Similarly is the volunteer experience section. So you can see on the left that Tracy has a career counselor volunteer experience listed in the volunteer experience section. While FlexJobs does have, or while LinkedIn, does have a volunteer experience section, if you have a volunteer experience that is professional level work and that's related to the type of jobs that you're applying for, that can actually be moved into your professional experience section. It doesn't need to be in the volunteer experience section. One reason why we suggest to do this is just because the professional experience section is a little bit closer to the top than your volunteer experience section. And so it will get seen a little bit sooner and faster as opposed to an employer or hiring manager having to scroll all the way down to see your volunteer experience. They may also not think to look in the volunteer experience section for relevant work. So if you do have a volunteer experience that is professional level work that's similar to the jobs that you're applying for and that you want to be doing, go ahead and add those in your professional experience section. Now, you heard me mention in the last slide that Tracy had a period of time where she was doing different consulting and volunteer independent contractor work. This was one of those opportunities that she combined into that one section. So not only did she move it to her professional experience, but she combined it into that section with multiple other independent contractor or consulting experiences. The last thing we're going to talk about is the education section. One concern for a lot of job seekers is the ageism piece and the nervousness that employers or hiring managers will see your dates of your education and that will date you and that you may be, discriminated against because of that. So many people may not know this, but you can actually remove the dates from the education section. You don't need to keep the dates there. So if this is a concern for you and you don't want people to know when you graduated, you can edit each of your education experiences and simply remove the dates. You can see before she had her dates and after we removed them. Another thing you will notice is that on her Florida State EDS experience, she didn't have any activities or societies listed. And on the after, we went ahead and added a relevant association that she was involved in, especially because it is still important to the work she's doing today. So make sure that you're also considering what extracurricular activities or involvement you were doing in each of these educational opportunities and including those if you aren't already. All right, to recap, a few things you can do to update your LinkedIn profile in 15 minutes or less. Update your headline, thinking beyond just your job title. What are the unique skills, interests, abilities, or your unique value proposition that you can add into your headline? Remembering that this will be one of the very first things that people see and find you by. Adding work examples to the featured work section on your profile. What previous work experience, articles, or media can you pin to the top of your profile to show the work that you've done already, to highlight some of your proud accomplishments? Next is cutting down your work experience, only focusing on what is the most recent, important, and relevant to the jobs that you are applying for. Next is adding your professional and relevant volunteer experiences to your professional experience section. If the volunteer work that you've done is professional level work and it's relevant to the jobs you're applying for, go ahead and add that to your professional experience section. Now, you can remember to, in parentheses or in the description, write volunteer. So you're not, showing or trying to show that it was a work experience. You can still say that it was volunteer, but just moving it up so that it gets seen a little bit sooner. And then last, removing the dates from your education section if ageism is a concern for you. This certainly isn't a concern for everyone, and you don't need to do it if it's not important to you, but just know that it's an option if this is something that you've thought about. Hopefully, you learned at least one new tip or trick today, and you feel a little bit more confident updating your LinkedIn profile.